Ladies and gentlemen, can we please take our seats? We're about to start after our 15-minute coffee break.
And so I hope the room enjoyed the NRI presentation. And we still don't have people's attention. If we could come to order now. We have two more really important sessions left on today's agenda. One is the National Regional and Youth IGF Initiatives discussion, which Anya Genko is going to lead us through. And then after that, we will have the updates from related intergovernmental organizations. So Anya, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the floor. I would like just to start briefly with some records on the NRI's network in terms of how many national, regional, sub-regional and youth IGFs are recognized. I will refer to the joint work of the network, and then luckily a number of NRIs are present here, the coordinators, members of the organizing committee, so perhaps it would be the most effective if they could take the floor and speak concretely about their work. So very briefly, for those that are maybe not aware of the nature of the NRIs, just to say that there wasn't a specific call for the NRIs in the Tunis agenda that gave the mandate to the IGF. However, I think the roots of the NRIs are actually stipulated in the paragraph 80 of the Tunis agenda, where it was an encouraged development of multi-stakeholder processes on a national, regional, and international levels. Some of the NRIs started their work in 2006 and so on. For example, the Caribbean IGF even predates the IGF itself. We're very fortunate to have a very firm network today of more than 100 NRIs, to what I will come a bit later. Just very briefly to say as well that the NRIs are completely independent in their work. They entrusted the IGF Secretariat to run the recognition process, first of all looking at whether the NRIs adhere to the core IGF principles, which means that the IGF Secretariat together with the NRIs look at whether the NRIs are multi-stakeholder in their organization, whether they're bottom-up, open, transparent, inclusive, and non-commercial in their work. All these core principles are also reflected in the toolkit of all NRIs that was produced in 2016-17. So you can see on this graph that the NRI's number is continuing to grow. And in 2019, actually at this present moment, we're speaking about 114 officially recognized NRIs, with having 82 countries that established their processes, 17 regions, and 15 youth IGFs. Looking just from a very global geographic review, you can see there is a solid balance of the NRIs spread across the world. And now maybe going just briefly into the NRI's integration at the annual IGF processes, focusing primarily on the 2019 meeting. So since 2016, the NRIs were requesting the main session from the MAG, and so far that session was approved, and it was organized collaboratively with all NRIs. This year, through a bottom-up open consultative process of all NRIs, the network has identified the topic for this year's session, and I guess tomorrow and the day after we will be discussing whether this session will be approved and whether we will go into implementation. But so far we know that the focus should be on the emerging technologies and their interfaces with inclusion, security, and human rights. Aside of the main session, for the past two IGFs, the NRIs were organizing the collaborative sessions. These are interactive sessions that are organized by NRIs from different regions, geographically speaking, on a topic of mutual interest. All these topics are identified through a bottom-up open consultative process of the NRIs, and we started that process for this year in February, closed it in late April. So these 6 topics that you can see on the presentation are actually the results of that process. So you can see that the focus for the sessions this year will be on cybersecurity, on access, data protection, human rights, surveillance, and harmful content on the internet. It is already a tradition that aside of these sessions that I've mentioned now, the NRIs are organizing the so-called coordination session. That is an open work meeting between all NRIs, between representatives from the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the chair of the MAG, the secretariat representatives, and of course the wider IGF community of whoever has interest to learn more about the NRIs and also primarily brainstorm on how can we all work together and advance the entire IGF ecosystem. This year the NRIs have applied to have a booth. So for this year what we're trying to do is preparing materials for that booth. So we are producing some publications, flyers on the nature of the NRIs network, how to connect with individual NRIs, and a very unique presentation that will outline more than 70 NRI meetings that we expect to happen in this year, with photos, with some concrete outcomes of those meetings, which I think would be very informative for the community. And aside of just focusing primarily on the annual meeting, the NRIs are, of course, despite the fact that they're being independent, very much part of the IGF's process that goes throughout the year, and with that the intersessional activities. They are contributors to our best practice forums. Part of them are also part of the dynamic coalitions. Of course, depending on a year, we identify joint objectives. So for instance, in past years, we worked on developing publications together. This year is very specific because of what you heard at the beginning of this day. We're focusing on developing capacity in the... just a second, identify. We're focusing on developing capacity in developing countries that have their own IGF processes, of course, consulting with the NRIs and following the bottom-up request from the multi-stakeholder organizing committee of the NRIs in order to meet their request and what's needed to strengthen the processes on national and regional levels. And yes, very shortly, if you would like to learn more about the NRIs, I think the best starting point is to contact the IGF Secretariat that will put you in touch with other NRI colleagues, or you can write directly to the NRI's mailing list. You can see the subscription results here. Before maybe you will give floor to individual NRIs that are present in this room, what I will tell just for the record that the latest national IGF that we recognized was Vanuatu IGF, and they already had their meeting, which was very successful. Tomorrow, for example, the Finnish IGF will be celebrating its 10th birthday. They will be streaming also in English aside of the national language, so we do invite you to try to balance and maybe follow that important anniversary. So that would be from me for now, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anya. You know, as always, a very informative and very efficient update. Now, what we wanted to do with these sessions was not only get a status update in terms of current activities and that sort of thing, but really hope to start a discussion. And I know that this isn't the best process for doing that in. It's a very big room with respect to what we can do to better support the NRIs, what we can do to increase the collaboration. It's really important that the MAG actually hear from the NRIs, but then also if there are any other comments from community members with respect to how they see that engagement and any thoughts or suggestions there for improving it. Again, since this is the open consultation day, we ask MAG members to be in a listening mode versus and a lot of discussion. Are there any NRIs who want to come in and sort of supplement what Anya said, or any comments from any community members? We have quite a number of MAG members who are active in their NRI, so if you want to speak in your NRI role, then please feel free to do so. Desiree. Oh, Desiree, sorry. Okay, Desiree, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lynn, and good afternoon. I would just like to follow up with this report to just take this opportunity to remind ourselves, because we're talking about strengthening of the IGF, and we earlier also talked about, what are the concrete outputs that the IGF can produce, and we somehow keep forgetting that the national IGFs are the real output of this global IGF that we started and back in 2006. And, we were thinking that the real success would be if there wasn't a global one, but we had 191 or plus active NRIs. So I'm very pleased to hear that this is going really well, over 100 NRIs. And also that regional are taking off. Regional IGFs are also being strengthened, as well as this new youth IGFs, which is something that we should keep promoting. So I would say the less formal they are and easier they are to meet, maybe they could experiment, and it would be good to do an analysis if some of them are organized just through meetup groups, to have some kind of adjunct IGFs prep calls. It has to be a little bit less formal, but it would hopefully contribute to the overall success of NRIs. And whilst I have the opportunity to comment on the previous discussion, or I'll stop here and come back if people want to comment on NRIs.
Thank you, Desiree. Good points. And I mean, indeed, the NRIs are one of the most important, more central component, I think, to all the IGF activities. We have Sylvia in the queue. Sylvia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lynn. Silvia Cadena, Technical Community. I just wanted to build a little bit on the comments that Desiree just made, and also mention something that Anya highlighted about the Vanuatu IGF. I'm the co-chair for the APR IGF, and it was fantastic to see that after hosting the APR IGF in Vanuatu last year, on the last day of the event, they went on and decided that it was probably a good idea to have a similar space for those conversations, and how much they are engaged now with the actual global IGF to try to bring content from the global sessions and discussions that are happening there to their local one in Bismala, the local language in Vanuatu, and making use of all the skills they learned about remote participation that was part of the process of setting up the APR IGF in Vanuatu. So I think that it's really important that those spaces find a way so that the documents that they produce, the analysis that they produce on their own local laws and their own local frameworks are captured somehow into how the IGF actually influence policy all the way down and up. Thank you.
No, that is a great example as well. Thank you, Sylvia. Carlos, you have the floor.
Quickly, I can speak about the Internet, the IGF, the pre-IGF forum in Brazil, which is the 9th forum we are promoting in October in Manaus, Amazonas. But it would be quite interesting to hear about the regional IGF, which will be in La Paz, Bolivia, and we are lucky to have here Maria Paz as one of the co-organizers, so it would be great.
I'm sure it will be great. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Maria. Liana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Anya for this great presentation, and the overall work that she's doing is a focal point. of NRIs. It's not that easy to coordinate the work with so many initiatives, but it's doing very well, a fantastic job too, and thanks Anya for that. I'd like also to thank the German government for giving an opportunity, the funding opportunity for all those people who haven't been involved previously to the IGF, and so that they can apply for this year and attend the IGF in Berlin. This is really a challenging issue, the funding, to find money to come for the IGF. So thanks to the German government for this opportunity. And the other thing that as an NRI we're doing is the collaborative session, and I'd like to highlight that I hope all these bottom-up activities that we're doing and coming together over some topics would be an added value to the overall program of IGF. Thank you.
Thank you, Liana. Maria, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lynn. And it's Maria Pascanales, presenting civil society. As Carlos mentioned, I am also part of the organizing committee of Latin America IGF, which will take place in 6 to 8 August this year in La Paz, Bolivia. We are very happy with the result of Latin American IGF in sparkling this interest across the region to have national initiatives talking about internet governance. It was the case that many countries like Brazil were really ahead on time, hosting a national IGF, but in other places of Latin America, the hosting of Latin American IGF has sparked the interest at local level, and many of the national meetings are have started as a consequence of hosting the Latin American IGF. In the case of this year, we are now in the process of setting the agenda. We just opened our call for the community can input through a survey about the different topics that they want to include in the agenda for our coming Latin American IGF. Part of the agenda will be taken from this consultation, and another percentage of the agenda will be structured according to the different proposals that we can gather in the organizing committee from the different stakeholders. So this is a new modality that we started last year, and it was a very good way in which we could dynamize a little bit the selection of the topics and include some innovative ones, and also starting to explore more flexible formats. So we had a very good result last year in Argentina, the last version, and we will be repeating this model. But of course, for setting those topics that will be proposed for each one of the stakeholders group, it's really important to continually hear the community, as I say, not only to the consultation, but also other kind of input that we can informally receive to other channels about some of the things that could be good to be incorporated as part of these proposals of the different stakeholders. So it's what I can update for now. We think that we want more collaboration with the global IGF. We sometimes feel that the timing in which we hold our session, it's a little bit against to that collaboration, because it came too late for being able to include some of the topics that we have as conclusion in our regional meeting. But for sure we will find between those topics that were mentioned before that are already set for different sessions for the national and regional initiative, an opportunity to provide what we heard and what we collect from the community at the regional Latin American IGF. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Mary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Mary. I'm from Nigeria, Nigeria Internet Governance Forum. I'll start from there. I want to first thank Anya for great presentation, summarized all that that has been happening in the NRI's network. For me, we're going to hold the 8th National IGF in July in Nigeria. And for the first time, we're going to have Nigeria School of Internet Governance. We opened the call in early May, and by the time we're closing by the 20th of May, we had about 600 applications. And we couldn't manage all those applications, but we are designing, in the first instance, we are co-hosting with Nigeria chapter of ISOC, and so members of ISOC, especially the young ones, they applied. And we can't take more than a certain number for the school. Then we also have the Nigeria Youth IGF, which will be coming up, back to back with the National IGF. That will happen in July 10 and July 11. And the 8th National IGF, we also made a call. We did our consultation in terms of getting the theme and the sub-theme. And we have just made a call for speakers. And the number of interest that we have seen is just very, very interesting. So many people want to be associated with the NIGF. So I think that is very important to us. And our government institutions are also interested, and they have been giving us a lot of support, and we are not just from the civil society or the academia, rather from government and all other stakeholders are there. And when we finish our IGF and we'll do a recommendation, what we normally do is we send these recommendations to the stakeholders. Well, it's what they do with that recommendation is what we don't know for now. Then we are also planning the Nigeria is a big country, so normally when we do the national, we do sub-national, and this year we're going to do sub-national. We're looking at September to do the sub-national IGF, and we may be going to the eastern part of the country to hold that sub-national IGF, so that those that are not taking part at the national level, since we are holding it in either the capital or the economic capital, Lagos. So that's what we're planning for this year. And we're looking at digital Commonwealth for development. The digital Commonwealth for development, that's our overarching themes, and we have our sub-themes already published on our website. Then I want to speak about the West Africa IGF, which is also coming up in July, and the country hosting is the Gambia is hosting the West African IGF, and that will be our 11th. It should have been 12, but for the Ebola, so we couldn't hold it one year in between, so we have that. And as of today, the focal point, all the countries in West Africa had given us their focal point, and we're planning seriously for the Gambia hosting the West Africa IGF from July 25 and 26. But it will be preceded by the School of Internet Governance as well as the Youth IGF. The West African Youth IGF has just been accredited and endorsed by the Secretariat. Thank you, Anya, for that. And they are working so hard to, I think Adama is here, and Afia, they are part of the West African Youth IGF, and they may be able to say more about it. But the enthusiasm we have seen with the youth trying to be part of the IGF, I mean, is very good for the process, so that some of us that are aging will have other people that will take over from us. So, at the African level, we are hoping between July and September we'll hold our Africa IGF, and 3 countries are already bidding, and we are consulting now with topics and subtopics. And last week we were at African Union Commission, and we're being trained to train others on School of Internet Governance. Is a project between African Union and European Union. So African Union got funding for that, and over 70 Africans, experts from the stakeholder groups were there to be trained. And I think Michael displayed the certificate we were given, and Arieta was there. She was our coach, and the Diplo Foundation as well. So the momentum is catching up. So because Africa Union wants to see all countries in Africa run their process, establish their own NRIs, and those that have not started, they are gearing up to start. And we have 3 countries already bidding to host, and we're hoping that one of them would give us a good proposal and we host. If there are any question for the African side of the African continent, including my country, I'm available to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. That was a very comprehensive update. We need to stop this discussion after the current queue. We have a number of people that are calling in for the other related organizations, and that session should have started at the top of this hour. So if we could ask everybody to be as concise as possible with the comments, and if we need to come back and revisit some of this, we can try and find some other time in the agenda. Again, I think we lost a little too much time with the coffee break, and we're going to revisit those for tomorrow. Jennifer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lynn, for giving me the floor. Jennifer Chung, private sector MAG member. And so I'm not speaking in my MAG member capacity, but with my APR-IGF Secretariat hat on. I'll be very brief, just supplementing what Sylvia mentioned earlier about APR-IGF. We're also celebrating our 10th birthday this year. This year the forum will be in Vladivostok, Russia, July the 16th to the 19th. We've already actually had the program issued earlier this week, and there'll be 32 sessions in total, including plenary sessions and workshop sessions and capacity building sessions. The core conference has pre-events, which is capacity building, and of course we also have the Youth IGF, which we put a lot of emphasis on, especially in the Asia-Pacific region. The theme this year is enabling a safe, secure, and universal internet for all in Asia-Pacific. We're very excited to have that, and it will be online, it will be transcribed, and hopefully people who can't join us in person in Vladivostok can join us online and participate remotely. Ananda also mentioned earlier that the APR-IGF 2020 will be held in Nepal, so we're very happy to have Nepal's support, and hopefully we'll be able to get that all organized very soon, since we have this knowledge very early. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I think all these NRI activities are so important, and really so happy when you hear about countries like Nepal actually holding them for the first time as well. It's really exciting. Melinda, you have the floor.
Melinda Clem, I'll speak in my capacity as co-chair of IGF USA. I wanted to share a couple of highlights about both our process and what our annual event on July 25th will entail. We follow a similar process in terms of being very open and inclusive. And when we're putting from the beginning, where we have an open call for topics, this year we had over 75. We called those into 15 themes and then conducted an open survey, open to all participants in the United States. We were able to, given the timing, highlight the primary themes for the IGF meeting in November to give those a little more visibility. And each of those themes will be a part of our annual event, which will have cover 8 different topics. In addition to the 3 themes here, we're looking specifically at content regulation, antitrust in big tech, 5G and the technology that's enabling, artificial intelligence, and is the techlash justified, which is a somewhat unique American concept. Our event will also be live streamed again. It's on the 25th of July for anyone who would like to participate.
Thank you, Melinda. There's so much I'd like to build on with every one of these conversations, and I'm just feeling time pressure. Because one of the reasons we actually did the narratives and the reference was that we were hoping that that would actually allow the NRIs to flesh out their own set of discussions and topics, build their NRIs around things that were of interest to them, and then could report back on that, and that would feed next year's process as well, so that there was an informative loop. But again, just trying to stay really close to the schedule here. Constantina.
Thanks, Lynn, for giving me the floor. This is Titti Cassa, Government Stakeholder Group. I want to give just a few brief update about activities of Italy IGF. We have just assigned the call for location, so the next Italy IGF 2019 will be held in Politecnico di Torino, the 29th, the 30th, the 31st of October. We have also launched 2 public calls, one a call for issues to address thematic session of the plenary, and the other one is the call for workshop proposal. We are going to evaluate all these proposals in July, is trying to issue for an agenda at the end of July or the beginning of August. And I want also to share some thought about how to improve maybe IGF. I think it's important, to have a more involvement of the stakeholders in all the activities that are related to the IGF, all intersectional activity like the BPF and also the dynamic coalition. And it's important that we should try to reach also outside the IGF circle, also the community. And to do this, maybe NRIs could give a big support to the IGF. So, and another point I want to point out is about best practice forum. Usually, best practice forum lasts for 1 year. They end and they restart. Maybe having a longer period, 2 years, for instance, which could help, to have the attention of people that after the IGF, when the IGF closes, maybe they want to still work on the BPF, but we need to activate the process in order to understand if the BPF will be recharted for the next year and so on. So, thank you.
No, thank you, Gigi. Those are good observations, and particularly the last one with respect to the BPF too. Thank you. Arsene, you have the floor.
Thank you. So I was saying it's really great to see the number of NRIs which is increasing every year, and thanks to the work of the secretariats and Anya who are doing this. And I think it's a very good move and a very good way to ensure the discussion is kind of bottom up, because those discussions that are happening at national or regional levels are feeding into the global IGF. And so this is kind of an indication that the IGF process should not end, that the global forum needs to be strengthened enough so it can continue to be stronger and stronger. But however, this comes with 1 or 2 challenges, and maybe I should call them opportunities, because many of these participants to these NRIs are now eager to attend or to be part of the global process. as well, of course, as the subsequent sub or regional events. And many of these people cannot fund their participation, and so there is a need to have someone to cater for the expenses of making sure those are also able to attend the global events. And so I see one of the ways to solve this is to encourage many more supporters or funders, and many of those organizations that are bringing people to the IGF. And I don't know how this can happen, but they can liaise or work with the NRI network in order to be able to conduct outreach and be able to reach out to those NRIs. About the African IGF, I have just a small update to add. A lot has been said by Mary already, but I wanted to add that the African School of Internet Governance is scheduled to happen right before the African IGF, which will be first week of September this year. And this is a tradition that I think is coming back, something to encourage because it allows participants from the school to also be able to attend their first African IGF, which in my sense I believe it's something very good. Lastly, the DRC IGF is scheduled for July, and it will be happening in Goma. Thank you.
Thank you, Arsene. It's very interesting, very encouraging as well. Raquel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Lynn. I will be very short. I'm Raquel Gatto, but I'm speaking in my capacity as part of the LAC IGF committee. Just to complement what the excellent update that Maria Paz already did, but there is one major activity the LAC IGF committee decided to take this year, which is an assessment to evaluate the LAC IGF itself and look ahead in the future what it can improve and how it can be improved and what can be done. And in order to do this assessment, we are looking into several layers, if you will, if you may say, the governance structure, the processes like the agenda shaping, the outcomes, the stakeholder participation, as well as the interactions between the national, regional, and the global IGF. Right now, it's in the early stage of collecting data gathering with interviews with experts within the region, including some of the former members, MAG members, and also benchmarking with some of the successful experiences that we hear here in the room. So just to say, Anya, thanks for your excellent work. If you have not been contacted yet, you will be, and several others. And if anyone else wants to share any of those experiences, please just let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel. And Annette, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Annette Mühlberg. I'm member of the steering committee of the German IGF. I would like to say hello to everybody and just to inform you that the German IGF will take place in September, and that we are very happy to work together with Anya in linking up with these NRIs and also try to work out messages that interact, and I think this could be helpful so that we really have focus on all these different topics and have for each of these topics a special message, and we try to coordinate with Anya. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. Just quickly before we move to the next section, I really want to thank all the NRIs and Anya, of course, as well, for all the effort you put in all year long for all of your activities. And I would also like us to think about how we can actually make this session a little richer. I mean, the things I've learned from the NRIs, I've learned from one-on-one discussions with them, more because I've happened to be in an NRI and I see that there's a different process that they've used to kind of get outputs together. A lot of those have come in to the IGF processes. Some of them actually came into our workshop evaluation process discussions a couple of years ago, specifically from the Latin American IGF community and Eurodig as well. So if we could find a way to start to share a lot of those learnings or understand what sort of things you've piloted and what worked and what didn't work and which things might bring up to the, would be really helpful. And I don't want to take away from these updates because they're extremely informative. But maybe I would just ask Anya to think if there's some way to capture some of these updates, even in just a table or a Word document that just gives us a snapshot, maybe for each one of the IGFs, of kind of current activities or plans as they're moving forward, because it's extremely interesting and really informational. But I think we're missing an opportunity to actually learn from each other in the processes. And I said, I've seen so many good things come up from the NRIs, but to some extent, I feel like it's almost because I happen to have experienced them or had a conversation over a coffee with somebody. So I don't know if we start to trigger a discussion which said, what are the things that are happening in the NRIs from a process or a pilot or increase outputs, or that we want to have a discussion on. But if we can find a way to really kind of get a lot of that richness up, I think that would be. So happy to have a different brainstorming discussion in whatever kind of format or cycle works as well, so that we just make sure we're really learning kind of deeply from all the practices at the local and regional levels. But a sincere thank you to everybody, and apologies as well for having to sort of push us through that a little bit. Chengetai informs we actually have 10 organizations that would like to make some comments here before the end of the meeting. So I would like us all to go through those. If we need to run over a little bit, I'm hoping that we can get some support from the transcribers to do that. Maybe we can check in the background, and I guess from the AV support as well. Chengetai saying they're not for me. Chengetai, he thinks that's possible. So this section of the agenda is really to invite other kind of related organizations to come in and talk to some of their internet governance efforts as it either impacts or is of interest to, or we can feed into their efforts specific to the IGF. So I'm not sure, am I meant to go by the order that's actually here first? Okay, so Chengetai has a list, and I don't know if it's public anywhere, but I'll list out the next sort of three, so we don't have people kind of confused over what's happening in the queue. But the first one is the World Economic Forum, second is UNICEF, third is ISOC, and then there's another 6 or 7 beyond them as well. So for the World Economic Forum, we have Manu George and Derek O'Halloran. Manu or Derek, or both, you have the floor. Thank you, and very sorry for the late start here too.
Hello.
Hi, Manju.
Yeah. Hi, Lynn. Thank you. Hello to everybody in Berlin, as well as to the IGF community online. My name is Manju George, and I'm responsible for some of our digital economy-related portfolios here at the World Economic Forum. Apologies for not being there in person, and thank you to IGF and all of you for the opportunity to contribute. At the forum on the topic of digital economy, in partnership with all of we've outlined a mission to help shape an inclusive, sustainable, and trustworthy digital future. And within that, identified at least 6 shared outcomes that the world as collectively need to achieve, and where deeper public-private cooperation is key to making progress. The first one there is that we leave no person behind, especially getting the remaining 50% of the world's population online, and sort of ensuring a safe and valuable internet. And some of the rethinking of investment models or collaboration models that need to happen to get us there. A second area that we are focused on is in advancing digital identities that empower individuals and offering them a range of opportunities online while also protecting their rights and personal freedoms. A third area of focus is the digital transformation strategies that are adopted either by businesses or governments or civil society organizations, especially in introducing new technologies or new business models, the platform business model, 5G, the fourth industrial revolution technologies. How do we make sure that those are sustainable and responsible? A fourth area is particularly around the disruptions that are caused by the fourth industrial revolution technologies, be it AI or IoT or blockchain. We recognize that those are unprecedented, and in that new context, you need new rules and agile ways of making those rules. So the governance question is one that we're particularly interested in. A fifth area is how do you keep our people, processes, and infrastructure secure and resilient to manage existing as well as new threats? And finally, how are we able to share data in ways that maximize public good while having clarity on how the rights and permissions are shared across the various stakeholders? And in each of these 6 areas, and we recognize that there are additional areas and different framings possible. This is just one frame that we arrived at in consultations with all of our members and partners. And in each one of these 6 areas, our approach to impact is to be a platform that supports mission-aligned actions and coalitions and collaborations from our partners and constituents to amplify those, to support those, to help scale those, and to accelerate those. And in a generic theory of change there seems to be to build awareness about an issue, to evolve shared understanding and catalyze action. So concretely, progress is being made through our events around the year, connections that are made across the various organizations in our network, our public engagement channels, etc. We have a great admiration for the IGF community and have had opportunities in the past to participate in some IGFs on specific issues within those 6 areas that I outlined. So are very keen to hear more about the activities and ideas represented in the community, and where there may be opportunities for the forum to to help as a platform. And so we really look forward to collaborating through the year as well as in November. And for those of you who are in Berlin, one of my colleagues, Julius Schulte, is in the room. And thank you again for the opportunity, Lynn.
Thank you very much, Manju. And maybe Julius, if you can just put your hand a little higher, then everybody will know who you are. I'm also very conscious that there was a proposal from WEF with respect to some possible areas of collaboration that we put on the table in January, but didn't advance at that meeting. There was not an appropriate representation. So I think we should dust that off and take that into account at the same time we look at some of these opportunities, Manju. So thank you. Next on the list, I have UNICEF. Jasmina, I think. Jasmina.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all participants, and very big thanks for inviting me to present some of our work. My name is Yasmina Byrne, and I'm a Chief of Policy in UNICEF's Division of Data Research and Policy. And I just wanted to mention that the key themes of IGF 2019 resonate very strongly with the priorities of UNICEF and the areas where we work. As an organization that is concerned with child rights, we are interested in seeing a greater focus on children, as children constitute about 1/3 of all internet users globally, and in the developing countries, that percentage is even higher, up to 50% of all users are those who are below the age of 18. So our priorities for the organization are really to ensure that all children have affordable access to high-quality online resources, and with a particular focus on girls and children who live in remote and underdeserved communities. we are working to ensure and establish connectivity to schools through the partnerships like Generation Unlimited, through our collaboration with ITU. But through bringing connectivity, we're also hoping that we can strengthen our engagement on development of skills and literacies needed for young people and children to thrive and in the 21st century economy. So in addition to development of skills and literacies, our priorities to ensure that children remain safe online from abuse, exploitation, harassment, and bullying, and that their data and privacy are protected. In order to achieve this, we work with the private sector, with governments and civil society, with a range of partners, including platforms such as World Economic Forum. And we do that through various different initiatives, through doing research with children, and particularly our flagship initiative is Global Kids Online, which is a national household survey with children and their parents and carers about opportunities and risks they face online. We work closely through the We Protect Global Alliance on prevention and protection from sexual abuse and exploitation online. We work on innovation in using digital technology to help us achieve the goals in health and education sector, but we also develop policy guidelines and recommendations for the global community on children's issues. So I just wanted to mention one of these initiatives now, because in the interest of time. We have started working with IEEE, Berkman Klein Center, Government in Finland, World Economic Forum, and some other partners to develop policy guidelines on artificial intelligence and child rights. The idea really behind these guidelines is to support the governments and the private sector as they're developing the policies and strategies on artificial intelligence to understand the benefits and the risks for children. As we are witnessing now that many countries are actually starting to either adopt or develop these policies, we are also noticing an absence of focus on children and their rights and a unique position children have. On the 26th of June, we are going to have a kickoff workshop in New York with some 50 experts and representatives from the government and the private sector. And following that workshop, we are then going to start really drafting these guidelines that are going to be open for consultation. We're hoping also to work with a number of countries to try to pilot them and to turn them into practice, and also to develop appropriate standards that would accompany these guidelines. So we hope that at the IGF in Berlin, we will use this as an opportunity to share the progress and solicit input, but also to engage more actively with the whole IGF community and to have a broader dialogue with you all about how to ensure that children's rights are respected in the digital environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jasmina. UNICEF is one of the connections we made through the side event in New York alongside the STI forum. So really pleased to hear your update and really look forward to engagement on some critical issues and some that I think we probably haven't spent quite enough time on, but I know a couple of MAG members are very, very interested in. So next we have ISOC, we have Renalia, and then just so people can get prepared, we have UNESCO and the World Association of Newspapers and News Publishers are the next two speakers after. But Renalia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lynn. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Renalia Abdurrahim. I'm the Senior Vice President for Strategy and Implementation at the Internet Society. It is a pleasure to be here. Guten Tag. I'd like to just take a moment to express my appreciation because I'm here in person and I'd like to express it in person to the people in the room. So first I'd like to congratulate the German host, Mrs. Daniela Brunstrup and her team for the excellent work in organizing this meeting and other related meetings. I personally am looking forward to the IGF at the end of this year because I think it will be held to a high German standard of efficiency and productivity. Next, I'd like to express my appreciation for the outreach efforts to raise more awareness and participation at the IGF. The side event at the 4th Multi-Stakeholder Forum on Science, Technology and Innovation that was held last month was particularly useful for us at the Internet Society. And I'd also like to thank the IGF Secretariat, Chengetai and his team, UNDESA, the MAG members around this room, and its marvelous chair, who's done, I think, a tremendous job. Thank you so much for the hard work. It's well appreciated. As you know, the Internet Society champions an open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy Internet. I'm not sure if everybody knows that, but I thought I'd just mention it. And I'd like to take the opportunity to highlight a few key initiatives that I think may intersect with the work of the IGF itself. The first is an initiative in Connecting the World, where we focus on building capacity and creating an enabling environment for community networks to grow around the world in every region. This is something that we're doing now, and it is something that we will continue to do into the future to address the needs of the last billion. The second initiative that I'd like to flag is something called MANNERS, which stands for Mutually Agreed Norms on Routing Security. This is an initiative to help ensure that our global internet traffic routing is secure, and it is oriented towards reducing internet leakages and hijacking. And the third initiative that I'd like to flag is essentially an initiative on IoT, Internet of Things. We collaborate with Consumers International to raise awareness amongst consumers so that they know that they need to demand privacy and security in their IoT devices. We also work on developing a privacy and security framework targeted at manufacturers because we think that they need to come up with or either comply with standards. And we work with Mozilla to establish a minimum standard, as well as we have our own higher level standards for those high achievers. And also, we have produced policy toolkits for policymakers to make them aware so that if they have manufacturers of IoT in their countries, that they need to engage them and make sure that the manufacturers comply with these standards. And finally, I'd like to touch on our initiatives on the IGF itself. We have been supporting and participating at the IGF at all levels, globally, regionally, nationally, and locally, at the organization, ISOC organization, as well as through our regional bureaus and our chapters, and we expect to continue to do that. We believe in strengthening the IGF, essentially, and we hope that the high-level panel on digital cooperation report that will be delivered to the UN Secretary General very soon will support needed reforms of the IGF while maintaining its open and multi-stakeholder nature. And we believe that the world is better off with an IGF that is capable of ensuring its relevance, effectiveness, and inclusivity. Other forums that do not do this is not necessary. We need something that works. We need to have a forum where all the stakeholders can come together and talk about issues that affect the internet and users around the world. Right now, Raquel and I have just come from the Internet and Jurisdiction Conference. And we have observed this trend also at the Internet Society, this increasing appetite for internet regulation. And internet regulation, other than climate change, is likely the most pressing policy discussion of our time. And we need fora that are effective for us to come together and discuss, because regulation of the internet is not something that can be approached easily or hastily. It requires a careful approach because of complexity and interdependencies. So that's my message for today. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Renalia, and thank you for all the many years of strong ISOC support at all the levels as well. I don't say that because of my past position, but I do think it's important. Next, we have Sasha from UNESCO. Sasha, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Lynn, and thank you to everybody in the room. It looks much sunnier in Berlin than it is in Paris, so I wish that I was there with you all. My name is Sasha Rubel, and I coordinate the work of the IGF on behalf of UNESCO. First and foremost, I would like to echo the thanks expressed in the room to the excellent work of the IGF Secretariat. It was a great pleasure working with you this past year, organizing the IGF at UNESCO headquarters in Paris. Paris, and we look forward to continuing working closely with you leading up to the IGF in Berlin. I would just like to take this opportunity very briefly to express to the room some of the work that we have been doing in the framework of our Internet Universality Indicators and artificial intelligence, and specifically highlight areas of possible cooperation going forward, both in the framework of the upcoming forum, but also beyond. As many of you are familiar with, at our last general conference, or second to last general conference in 2015, UNESCO member states adopted our Internet Universality Framework, which argues that the Internet should be rights-based, open, accessible, and multi-stakeholder. And following the adoption of this framework, UNESCO undertook a 2-year global multi-stakeholder consultation process to define the Internet Universality indicators based on what we call the Rome Principles. And this framework was approved last November by UNESCO's Intergovernmental Program, which is the International Program for the Development of Communication. These indicators, based on the Rome Principles, look at 4 key dimensions of national internet environments. Specifically, its respect for human rights, its openness, the extent to which it is accessible to all, and the extent to which it is nurtured by multi-stakeholder participation. The work of the national assessments aims to measure 6 categories of indicators. The full indicators are 303 indicators, and the core indicators, there are 110 in countries at a national level. And this national assessment process is really targeting looking at how to present a clear and substantive understanding of the national internet environment and national policies as it concerns internet governance, assess the environment and policies and look at how they are in line with the Rome Principles, and then finally develop policy recommendations and practical initiatives that will enable countries to meet their goals and align their national policies with the UNESCO principles while the internet governance ecosystem continues to evolve. So since November 2018, we have been implementing these indicators at the national level in several countries, notably in Kenya, Senegal, Benin, Tunisia, Germany, Austria, Brazil, Ecuador, Panama, Paraguay, Mexico, and Uruguay. And we have proposed, in fact, a Day Zero event looking at how to improve evidence-based internet policies using the Rome indicators. And this has been proposed and co-organized with the German National Commission of UNESCO, the Council of Europe, the OECD, the Association of Progressive Communications, the Internet Society, ICANN, CETIC.br, Mission Publique, GNI, and the GFMD. We hope in the framework of this Day Zero event, should it be approved, that we can bring together key actors and research institutions and individuals interested in supporting the national assessment process, but also offer on-site training to interested actors and research teams on the implementation process and research methodology based on the best practices that will be presented by the countries who have implemented these indicators. So we look forward to, if approved, welcoming you all to this Day Zero event, and also invite those that may be interested in partnering with UNESCO to implement this assessment tool, which in no way is a tool to be used to rank one country against another. It is really a tool used to help align internet governance and internet governance policies at the national level with human rights. We look forward to working with you in this field. Secondly, I'd just very briefly like to touch on some of the work that we've been doing around artificial intelligence. And to start off with, really thank ISOC for their continued support because we kicked off our work on looking at the development of ethical frameworks and human-centered AI on the margins of this past year's IGF by holding open discussions on AI and knowledge societies with ISOC and the Mozilla Foundation. Since then, and being very active both in the outstanding work that the IEEE has undertaken as it concerns developing standards on AI, but also the EU Commission's work, as well as the Council of Europe and the recently adopted OECD principles on AI, we have now decided at our most recent executive board to build on the excellent work of these international and regional organizations and consider developing the first international standard setting instrument in this field. And this decision will be made at our upcoming General Conference in November, following a preliminary study published by COMEST on the ethics of artificial intelligence in the field of UNESCO's mandate. And I would like to invite colleagues interested to consult this study that is online that will guide the work that UNESCO will be undertaking with our partners, and we hope many of you around the table, in undertaking, as part of this process of standard setting, of developing the standard setting instrument, a multi-stakeholder dialogue and civic debate that will occur both online and offline, building on the existing standards and principles that exist to move towards international consensus on human-centered and ethical AI. In this regard, we have also been looking at developing our work on AI in line with our Internet Universality Framework and Rome principles. We have recently published a study called Steering AI and Advanced ICTs for Knowledge Societies, which looks specifically at how principles of Internet governance can be applied to the development of AI governance, and particularly ethical AI governance. And we have proposed a UNESCO Open Forum at the upcoming IGF on this subject. Lastly, I'd just like to close and underline that in the framework of our global priority, gender equality, we have recently released the publication, I'd Blush If I Could, Closing Gender Divides in Digital Skills Through Education, which looks specifically at, for us, the need to address one of the most urgent issues in the development and use of AI, which is gender bias embedded in algorithms. And this was developed and undertaken as part of our coalition called the Equals Coalition, in partnership and with the support of the German government. And I would like to thank the German government for their continued partnership in this field and on this crucial subject. And we hope we'll have the opportunity to share more of this work with you all at the upcoming IGF in Berlin, where we look forward to being present en force.
Thank you, Sasha. It's a very fulsome update and some very, very important topics. So appreciate your staying with us. Next we have the World Association of Newspapers and News Publishers, and Elena is going to address us, and then we have the ITU and GIP Diplo are the next two in queue.
So hello everybody, and thank you for having me here. I started being able to participate in the ecosystem of the IGF a couple of years ago, when for the first time it came to Europe, and therefore within reach of my very limited news media budget. And I've been really loving the process that I saw of inclusion of the news media into this environment. First of all, I should say that it's not easy to get the news media interested in a multi-stakeholder process. I know, and I suspect that some of the reasons are to be found in a bit of a residual arrogance in the guys in my business. At the same time, a portion of the IGF community has a tendency to consider legacy media outdated, in a way superfluous to the conversation. The truth is that what the internet is all about is essentially free expression in the respect of human rights, or at least that is what we, the good guys, want it to be. And this result needs a team effort in which news media needs to be active participants and contributors. This 2019 is shaping up to be the year where the news media really starts an active collaboration within the AGF ecosystem, and there are many examples of this evolution. In the chair summary of IGF 2018, news media and journalism are featured when relating the words of Macron, who said that supporting a content creator ensures the quality and sustainability of our news media. And I would like to personally thank the chair, Lynn, and the secretariat, and Eleonora and Chengetai for the inclusion of these specific words. Indeed, the sustainability of news media is at the center of our efforts at the IGF level. WANIFRA has been working for the last 2 years with colleague organizations in the media development community, such as Global Forum for Media Development and the Center for International Media Assistance, organizing a symposium on media development and internet governance, which took place around the IGF for 2 years. And together we recently established a dynamic coalition on sustainability of journalism and news media, which we invite you all, of course, to be part of if you would like so, to join our mailing list. We have submitting sessions, proposals at the IGF, and look forward to participating. We are excited to host our first official meeting in Berlin in November. In particular, we would like to explore in one of these sessions the impact on sustainability of the new laws and policies aimed at regulating the tech sector, because these have been analyzed under the point of view of freedom of expression, but the implications towards news media sustainability remain largely unexplored. A second submission concerns a workshop that would explore ways of journalism and civil society to bring AE algorithms and their creators to account, and how governance could be adjusted to ensure that a balance be found between the need for openness and the need for privacy and confidentiality. WAN-IFRA will also likely be involved with WIPO and other friends from the creative sector, such as the broadcasters, AEBU, in a session on local content. And in addition, with this year, we are proud to be an active part of EuroDig program, so thanks, Sandra, for that. We submitted a workshop proposal around the difference between media literacy and news literacy, and EuroDig was kind enough to not only accept our proposal, but even asked me to be focal point of the organization of the session, which will feed into Plenary 7, which is dedicated to online arms. All in all, I'm confident that steps have been taken to ensure that the news media begin being represented in some way in this environment, and that they can thus better contribute to the internet of the future. On our side, the World Association of Newspapers is keen to contribute as much as possible, and I'm wide open to any suggestions that may come from the IGF and from the stakeholders at this meeting. Thank you.
Alina, thank you, and thank you for your personal support and actions with respect to building the linkages between these communities. I think it's a very important and interesting area. Thank you. Next, we have ITU.
Sorry, Lynn, just a point. There was no name on the transcript for your intervention. It was really good, so it would be really good if she can put her name and organization for the transcript, if that's okay.
And we can make sure the Secretariat, I know it's Alina. Alina, what's your last name? I don't have it's in front of me.
It's Elena Perotti.
Perotti. I should have actually remembered that. Okay. I've been looking over Chengetai's shoulder because I didn't have the list in front of me, and by the time my head gets back here, I've forgotten what I looked at actually. And next in the queue we have ITU. Sadvi is going to be addressing us. Sadvi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and a very good evening to you all from Geneva. On behalf of ITU, I'd like to begin by thanking IGF and MAG for giving us the opportunity to contribute today. As in previous years, ITU looks forward to actively participating in the 14th annual meeting of the Internet Governance Forum in Berlin this year. We have already requested to be involved with organizing and collaborating on a number of events during this session. For instance, we've requested to organize an open forum session for the WSIS Open Consultation Process 2020. We're planning for this to be a physical meeting and invite all stakeholders to contribute towards building the agenda and program for the WSIS Forum 2020 through the online form available on the website. In addition, we have also requested to organize the 6th Annual Equals in Tech Awards 2019 and an Equals in Tech panel at IGF. The Equals in Tech Awards will celebrate initiatives that are bridging the gender-digital divide, while the Equals in Tech panel will give the winners of the awards an opportunity to share their experiences and commitments in this regard. And now, just to give you a quick brief on some of the initiatives that have taken place this year and that might be of interest to you all, I'll briefly touch upon a couple of items. As you may know, the WSIS Forum 2019 took place in Geneva in April this year, as a global multi-stakeholder platform dedicated to using ICTs to advance the SDGs. This year's WSIS Forum focused on fostering partnerships, showcasing innovation, exchanging best practices, and launching new tools and initiatives for this purpose. Spanning 300 sessions with participants from over 150 countries and more than 500 high-level representatives of the wider WSIS stakeholder community. The forum saw more than 3,000 ICT experts and implementation actors come together to make a significant contribution to this discussion. And finally, as of last week, ITU organized the AI for Good Summit, which is a unique forum focused on leveraging artificial intelligence to accelerate progress on the SDGs. This year, the summit brought together over 2,000 people and 250 speakers from more than 90 countries to discuss the role that all stakeholders can play in ensuring that AI solutions and businesses can be scaled for impact in a sustainable and meaningful way. Looking ahead, we will now have our governing body's council meeting next week, where, among other things, the topics for the open consultation of the Council Working Group on Internet will be discussed. We invite all stakeholders to contribute to the open consultations as soon as they are launched. Thank you again for your time and consideration. At ITU, we look forward to working closely with all of you to make this IGF a huge success. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadhvi. Appreciate your comments and always appreciate the opportunity to work closely with ITU on those issues. Next in the queue, we have GIP and Diplo. Marco, you have the floor.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Perfect. Thank you. I would like to thank the Chair for giving the Geneva Internet Platform the possibility to speak about our contributions to the Internet governance policy discussions and more broadly to the IGF. I will try to keep my intervention short, and I will start with mentioning among all the initiatives I'm going to tell you about the reporting initiative, which is probably the most important activity that we carry out. We report from the main digital policy related events happening in Geneva and around the world when possible, of course. In fact, in May, we reported from the Conference on Science and Technology at the United Nations here in Geneva, the CSTD, and we also followed the AI for Good Global Summit discussions at the ITU. We usually call this initiative Just-in-Time Reporting Initiative, as we write the reports and we publish them online within 2 hours after the sessions took place. This is basically what we did last year in Paris, where we covered about 90% of the sessions and published the reports on our website, the Digital Watch Observatory, that you can visit at dig.watch. Aside from the session reports, we also issued daily summaries of the discussions, what some of you may know as IGF dailies. At the end of the forum, we also compiled all these resources into a final comprehensive report that was covering the IGF as a whole. So it was basically a 3-step process: session reports, daily summaries, and the end of the conference analysis document that our team worked on during the last IGF. I'm also happy to underline that for the first time last year, our final report included an in-depth data analysis on the content, the topics, and the words that were most relevant, be it cyber, data, misinformation, so on and so forth. This year, we're looking forward to run this just-in-time reporting initiative again, together with the daily summaries and the end of the conference final report during the IGF in Berlin in November. In the meantime, in preparation for Berlin, we will continue our analysis throughout the year on the Digital Watch website and report from the main digital policy related events, as well as organize discussions on Geneva, Brussels, and Washington. In Geneva, for example, we're planning to continue our thematic discussions on specific digital policy issues. For example, we will continue with our data talks, meetings specifically focusing on data applications and data projects for international organizations in Geneva. Finally, I think it's also interesting to mention our monthly online briefings, which take place the last Tuesday of each month. Those briefings compile the main Internet governance developments of the previous 30 days, and their content is also published at the beginning of each month in the form of our newsletter. Coincidentally, the issue of the month of May will be available by the end of this week in English, French, and German, and you can freely download it from our Digital Watch Observatory website. Moreover, as many of you know, the launch of the final report of the high-level panel on digital cooperation is scheduled for the next Monday in New York and for Monday 17th in Geneva. And in order to unpack the content and best take stock of the recommendations included in the document, we are planning a follow-up event here in Geneva at the Geneva Internet Platform on June 18th. To close, for locations other than Geneva, we will organize thematic dialogues regularly. For instance, early this year, we had a discussion on AI and diplomacy in Brussels, where we launched the related publication. AI developments and the interplay between AI and policy are among the most important developments that we are monitoring closely this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Very, again, comprehensive set of activities. We always say there's a lot happening in the world of internet governance, and it's always amazing at just how much is happening. Next in the order, we have the Organization of American States, Carrie Ann Barrett. Carrie Ann, you have the floor.
Hello, I'm muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Carrie Ann.
Okay, it still said it was muted on my end. Apologies. Hello everyone. My name is Carrie Ann Barrett. I'm the Cybersecurity Policy Specialist at the Organization of American States. I work within the Cybersecurity Program. We wanted to just provide a really quick snapshot and overview of what we have been doing to the IGF community. And we wanted to ensure that as we prepare and lead up to IGF 2019 in Berlin in November, that our work will be at least known and persons will be able to ask us even more questions during some of the sessions that we're hoping that we'll be able to hold during that meeting. First and foremost, I wanted to have just outlined, for those who may not know, that the OAS works on cybersecurity, more specifically from a three-pronged perspective. We try to ensure that our member states and the world at large benefit from policy development. So we work on national cybersecurity strategies. We work on confidence building measures in cyberspace and national assessment. We also do capacity building with law enforcement, incident response teams, cyber exercises. And we have a platform that's called CSERTS Americas that helps to support our incident response teams within the 34 member states of the OAS. Finally, we do research and outreach, technical documents such as white papers. We have youth programs that works on strengthening youths in developing a career in cybersecurity or digital security, and we do awareness raising through reports that we produce. More specifically in some of the things that has happened more recently that would be of interest to you. We have published reports on financial sector, and we're actually developing a report right now on the state of cybersecurity with the Inter-American Development Bank, which will be published later this year. We wanted to highlight for the community our work on confidence building measures. Our member states in 2018 had established a working group on confidence building measures in cyberspace. And as a result, 2 confidence building measures were agreed and adopted by our General Assembly in June of 2018. Coming out of that, the working group saw it necessary to continue its work, and the cybersecurity program has acted as a technical secretariat for this group. For the past year, we have worked with our member states to establish national points of contacts in relation to policies. We have also worked with them to ensure that we have a repository of all policies, legislation, and documents related to cybersecurity. More recently this year, we held our second working group meeting. We're happy to let you guys know that coming out of that meeting, we're able to agree to 4 new CBMs, which were proposed and were approved by the SICTE 19th regular session meeting that was held last month. These 4 new CBMs actually focus on ministries of foreign affairs and their work to actually work in the digital space and be able to cooperate and have meaningful dialogue even in forums such as the IGF. It also focused on inclusion of cybersecurity into subject matters related to training for diplomats and ministries of foreign affairs, and on the cooperation and exchange of best practices of working groups in this area. We wanted everyone to know as well that we have been working with an entity called City Foundation to strengthen the digital gap in digital security. And we have a project that is called Pathway to a Digital Security Career. to date, over the past 2 years, we have actually trained in excess of 200 students who are now on the path to actually create or start a career in digital security. And I think just to close off on another highlight, as many of you may be aware that the UNGG renewed process kicked off this week. The OAS has been identified as one of the regional organizations to be consulted as a part of the UNGGE and the Open-Ended Working Group for ICTs. We will be holding our regional consultation on August 15th and 16th in Washington, D.C. Anyone who may want more information on this, please feel free to contact us directly. And I think on that note, I think we could probably close. We wanted to make it brief. If there are any other questions, we're still on the line. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carrie Ann, and very welcome. I really appreciate your joining today for the update. The Organization of American States is a really central organization. We have 4 more updates, just so everybody knows where they are in the queue. We have ICANN, a Council of Europe statement, a statement from Christian Ra and Sandra Hoffichter. I'm not sure I said either of those names right. I have to say I'm a little tired at the moment. So we have Veni for ICANN. Did Veni just step out of the room? He's on the phone or something?
Good afternoon.
Then why don't we just go to Chengetai, are you prepared to read out the statement from the Council of Europe?
Yes. Apologies in advance for my pronunciation of the name. So I'm reading a statement from Jan Kleinsen, Council of Europe, Director of the Information Society, Action Against Crime. So it starts off with, we congratulate the MAG on the excellent organization of last year's IGF meeting in Paris. We reiterate our commitment to continue our long-standing cooperation with its over 20 years of experience in internet governance. The Council of Europe continues to prepare standard-setting instruments that stem from multi-stakeholder expert discussions and are then adopted in the Committee of Ministers, maintains close cooperation with businesses, supports member states in implementing standards, and engages in regional and national IG forums. For 2019, the Council of Europe has submitted a number of proposals for open forums and workshops, and we look forward to close cooperation, including with respect to our modernized Convention 108. After many years of multi-stakeholder dialogue, interest and engagement of key stakeholders must be maintained. We therefore welcome the important political messages that emanated from IGF 2018. We also welcome the work of the high-level panel on digital cooperation. This is a general sentiment, however, that current challenges require more than dialogue and consultations. Clear outcomes are required as impacts of digital technologies on human rights, democracy, and the rule of law are becoming more and more apparent in scale and severity. The Internet Governance Strategy of the Council of Europe covers the period until the end of 2019. It will be succeeded by the Digital Government Strategy 2020 to 2023, which promotes transversal action and multi-stakeholder engagement of all Council of Europe sectors towards 3 main goals. A, empowerment of the individual user. B, rights protection and promotion. C, the principles of democratic governance and the rule of law. On the 26th to 27th of February, we organized jointly with the Finnish presidency of the Committee of Ministers a high-level conference in Helsinki, AI Governing the Game Changer. It allows for interdisciplinary expert discussions on priority concerns and necessary steps related to AI development. The conclusions of the conference were endorsed by the Ministers of Council of Europe, member states, at their recent meetings in May 2019, calling on the Council of Europe to critically assess existing gaps in the related regulatory framework with a view of preparing, in a multi-stakeholder approach, a possible legal framework instrument to ensure AI design, development, and application in line with Council of Europe standards on human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Thank you very much for your attention. That's the end of the statement.
Thank you, Chengetai, and thank you to the Council of Europe. We'll come back to ICANN. Benny, you have the floor.
I'm not sure what am I supposed to say, but I'm not part of the group that is dealing with this, so I cannot really say anything. Sorry.
This is the updates from related intergovernmental organizations section, not specifically commenting on.
Oh, I think.
Is it Nigel?
I think Nigel is online, and he should. Yeah, he should make it. Yeah.
Excellent, Nigel. Are you online?
No.
Well, if he isn't, then I can say a few words.
Yes,
he's online.
I'm online, am I? Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes. Go ahead, Nigel.
And I just see I've been in the chat as Nigel Roberts. I've always wanted to be Nigel Roberts, but I'm not him.
Nigel Hickson, for the record. Nigel, go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you for letting me say just a few words. It was good to just say a few words earlier. I'll be very brief. Just to say that ICANN remains a supporter of the IGF, and that might sound somewhat trite, but I want to say it in not just in terms of sort of finance and resources, which is obviously very important at the moment, as you've been discussing today, but also I think in sort of moral and spiritual ways, and that might sound somewhat trite as well, but I mean in terms of the commitment that ICANN has to the IGF and to the multi-stakeholder process, and I don't think that should be underestimated as we live through these times. It's just so important that we have this network of multi-stakeholder players to discuss these issues. As far as ICANN is concerned, there are a number of issues related to the internet and internet governance, of course, which we're currently discussing in our various working groups, and will be coming up to be discussed at our next meeting, which is in Marrakesh towards the end of June. One which concerns a lot of people is work on the implementation of the GDPR, the EU General Data Protection Regulation, and the arrangements that we're putting in place to ensure access to registrant information. And apologies for the noise. This is something which is very important in terms of adopting a system that allows uniform access to registrant information of domain names. That is something that's ongoing. At the meeting in Marrakesh, there'll also be some important discussions on a subsequent process for GTLDs. As you know, we expanded the GTLD space back in 2012 from 22 to over 1,000 generic top-level domains, and there's a process underway where there'd be another process perhaps in a few years' time, but that's still being worked out. And the important thing about that is that all stakeholders are engaged in this discussion process. The last bit of business that we're discussing, I mean, there's lots of other bits and pieces we're discussing at ICANN meetings, is the work on legislative tracking. This is an initiative that ICANN undertakes to try and identify where legislation and policies could undermine the operation of the DNS and the internet in general, and then discuss them with regional or national bodies, etc. And that's something we pay a lot of attention to. And finally, I just want to say, in case it comes ITU next week. ITU has its council meeting. You heard from ITU earlier. At the ITU Council next week, an application from ITU to be a sector member of the development sector. As you know, the ITU has different sectors, and ICANN is applying to be a sector member of the development sector, and that comes up next week in case anyone asks any questions, and we can obviously provide further information about that. Thank you, Lynn, for the opportunity, and all the best for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Venny has asked if he can say a few words as well. Venny?
Yeah, just information for you guys, for the MAG members, which I think may be interesting. I participated in May in a conference, one of the big New York-based conferences called Techonomy, and you can find it online. They were streaming it, and they actually have put, like, they publish a magazine, and the magazine was talking about the internet governance, and that to me was a big change, because usually tech companies in New York are not that much interested in internet governance. But I spoke at one of the sessions and were kind of they said that I'm the only optimist on the panel, because I was talking about what ICANN does in terms of keeping the internet and the domain name system secure, stable, and resilient. But I think it's important to see, because this was a meeting where there were a lot of, like, the CEOs or former CEOs of big companies, like Fortune top 100 companies were speaking. And if that is something that we can use in some ways, you know, to reach out to those companies. So here I come to you and DESA. You can take a look at the participants at this event and maybe reach out to them and try to bring them on board of supporting the IGF. That would be good. Thanks.
Thank you, Venny. Next we had Christiane. Christiane, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Lynn, and thank you to all the presentations we've heard so far, and thank you to the MAG for giving us this time to share our insights with you. My intervention is going to build a little bit on what our colleague from the OAS mentioned in her intervention, but also I'm hoping to connect this with something that our colleague Wolfgang said a little bit earlier about keeping the IGF a place for discussion, and there are many other forums where decisions are going to be taking place. And in this respect, this is not a Canadian initiative. This is a decision of the General Assembly last fall in the first committee, so a International Security Committee. They created not only a group of governmental experts, which is something small, succinct, it's been going on for a few years. Only 25 government experts get to sit on this and try to work out state behavior in cyberspace. But there was another resolution which created something called an open-ended working group. Now this process, though it is still adopted in the context of the General Assembly First Committee, which is focusing on international security, well, the resolution has a lot of language on human rights online, on terrorist use of cyberspace, and a number of things that are related not directly to internet governance perhaps, but part of that ecosystem. And one of the things to be mindful of is that the open-ended working group, it's going to be a meeting of states, but I thought it would be important for you to know that organizations that are accredited to the UN, to ECOSOC, will be allowed in the room as observers. So you might not be able to interact from the floor there, but certainly you will be able to talk and try to influence member states on the margins to explain why some decisions might be better than others, or explain why we shouldn't go down a certain route. This process will also have a consultative activity. I don't have dates for those yet. Well, my colleague Vinny from ICANN, who's based in New York, probably has some insights on that. But there will be another consultative process beyond the one that's going to happen for the GG. There's going to be one for the open-ended working group. So the open-ended working group held its first meeting yesterday, the 3rd and the 4th, well, Monday, in fact, and they sort of talked only of the modalities. The first substantive discussion is taking place in New York from the 9th to the 13th, and the second meeting will be from the 10th to the 14th of February. So I know a number of organizations in this room are ECOSOC accredited. ICC is accredited to the UN as well. So these are all organizations that would be able to join these meetings. So when we were talking about going to places where decisions were being made and not bringing decision-making process to the IGF, I think we have here an opportunity which might be interesting for all of the stakeholders in our community. So thank you for giving me the time, and happy to answer any questions you might have. But again, I'm not the owner of this process. I'm just sharing the recent developments on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christiane. It's a very important update, and I know our best practice forum on cybersecurity was interested in engaging with both those activities and trying to build some linkages between them as well. Sandra, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lynn. I also would like to give you an update on a process that we are starting on a European level as EuroDIG. It was mentioned already a couple of times, the report that is going to be released from the UN panel on digital cooperation. It is promised it will be released on 10th of June. And I guess EuroDIG is the first opportunity to discuss this report beside an online conversation that takes place, to discuss this report face-to-face. But we would like to go a step further and start an experiment in the European region and formulate a response, a European response on this report. I don't tell you anything new if I say that the IGF, EuroDIG and other multi-stakeholder dialogue platforms have laid an important ground for the work of this panel, and so they are playing a key role in digital governance. Therefore, I think it's just natural that the NRIs, not only EuroDIG, that the NRIs on a national and regional level should take up this report and prove what the recommendations are and how they apply for the region, for the nation, and so on and so forth. We hope to have reached a certain level of maturity until the IGF, where we would like to submit our results. And you will possibly understand that this is something that goes beyond having a European focus, but that actually the global community has a chance to get a consolidated response from a region, from a stakeholder group, so to say. It's an experiment. You know that EuroDIG was always open to experiment. It can also go wrong, so that we have too little participation or we cannot agree on something. But I think IGF for us, and I mean all of us, the local, the national, the global level, are the right place to try out such experiments. And I'm very curious how that works out in Europe. And of course I invite everyone here in the room, European or not, to follow this process and to maybe participate in it. What we will do, we will set up an online commenting platform where everyone can comment on this, and there will be a chair, and it will be a streamed working process, and we hope that we can come up with some results, mature or not, even if the result is we could not agree. This is, I think, a result telling for itself. For the IGF in Berlin in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Henriette, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lynn. I actually want to give the mic to my fellow commissioner, Wolfgang Kleinwachter, to update you on the work of the Global Commission on the Stability of Cyberspace.
A very brief update on the Global Commission on Stability in Cyberspace, which was established 2 years ago during the Munich Security Conference. And from the very first day, the Global Commission supported the IGF when we had a panel discussion in the IGF in Paris, which was well attended, and we tried to contribute as much as possible to the Best Practice Forum on Cybersecurity and to other issues related to security. We are now in the final stage of our work, so we are planning to prepare the final report for the Paris Forum, which is in November. We will deliver it also to the Berlin IGF, and the final The final version of the report will be presented to the Munich Security Conference in February 2020. You know, one of the key interim results are the so-called Singapore norm package, where we have 8 norms for the good behavior of state and non-state actors in cyberspace. One key norm is the protection of the public core of the internet. As Nigel has mentioned in his presentation, this is really a very crucial thing, and which is a new threat for the functioning of internet as a whole, because we see a growing number of attacks against the domain name system, the IP address system, routing systems, satellites and cables. So, and insofar, you know, this is a big challenge, and I can only invite the IGF to follow this issue in a particular way, because we need more also stronger commitments from all parts, governments and non-state actors, not to attack the key elements of the functioning of the internet. This goes far beyond traditional cybercrime and should be labeled as a crime against humanity. We are also will be part of the new processes in the United Nations, the group of governmental experts and the open-ended working group. We will have a presentation in the September consultations in New York, as was just mentioned. And my hope is that after the end of the work of the Global Commission of Stability, the issues will be further discussed by the IGF on its road to 2025. So the 2020s will be years where cybersecurity will play a key role in internet governance discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wolfgang and Henriette. I mean, I think that work is really impressive, and I appreciate all the time and effort I'm sure you all took to actually get to succinct norms with a succinct set of statements behind them. Well, I think it makes it a lot more accessible to a lot more people. That brings us to the end of day one. We did move the best practice forums discussion to the 10:30 slot tomorrow. I think the agenda is being updated on the website as well. We will be starting here at 10 o'clock sharp in the room. The rest of the agenda, I think, pretty much stays as it was, again, with that one move of the BPF into tomorrow. I want to thank everybody. I always feel I hear so much and I learn so much, and I want to dig into each one of them, and I want to go look at the websites and look at the reports and figure out what the linkages are. And I think we need to find a way to take those next steps with a lot of these updates and a lot of these activities. And I'm not really sure what that looks like. I mean, again, the Secretariat is really so thin and so stretched. I don't think we can ask anything more of them. But I mean, I think we should think through the MAG itself, whether or not we should get a small group to go through and look at both some of the comments and updates from the NRIs, from the intersessional activities, and from these intergovernmental organizations to see if there's any other additional linkages or liaisons or connections we want to make between them and the work of the IGF. So, you know, we'll continue noodling that around with the Secretariat, but if there's interest or resources on the side of any MAG members to pick some of that up, we'd be happy to hear that as well. You know, we have an ongoing goal to increase outreach and increase engagement, and to do that with new stakeholders. And we did get some new updates here today, I think 3 by my count. But it's important that having made that initial step, that we actually find some way to actually engage them and pull the pieces of work together. I'll ask Daniela if she has any final comments or anything for tomorrow. No? Then if I could thank the transcribers for staying on late, for the audiovisual crew behind as well, and I really want to commend them. I told them at lunchtime, but also here, this has been a superb setup. Everything works really, really well. I mean, not just the room layout and the screens, but all the support for online participants and the ability to pull them in so easily and timely. It really is just a really great setup and a great effort. So thank you very much. And have a great evening and a great warm night in Berlin.
Yeah, take advantage of Berlin and the nightlife in Berlin. See you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
By the way, did somebody lose their hotel key? It's a Hilton hotel key. If you have, please see Eleonora. I think she's got it.